And now there's a possibility I'm not going to be able to get lungs. Are you changing the rules on me here? Because it was like, if I don't get the lungs, I don't get through this unless you give me a miracle.
That was our friend, Chip Judd, talking about the unnerving medical crossroads he was at recently. On the last episode, Chip recorded in real time how it was difficult navigating and waiting on the medical news from his doctors. I updated you at the top of that episode that since Chip recorded it, he got the good news he was praying for and is currently on the waiting list to get a new lung. In this episode, Chip shares details of what that season of waiting was like, as well as getting the good news. His friend, Pastor Greg Surratt, shares his perspective of being greatly concerned about his friend.
We got a phone call that day.
Yeah, not till after hours. So the day had ended. Colleen and I are like, oh man, we got to go one more night, it looks like. And sure enough, I think it was 6:05. We got a call, and it was one of my reps from the hospital. And she said, we got the results. You are approved to go on the list. We just kind of lost it there for a minute. Told her if we were in her presence, we'd be hugging and kissing her. And
the two also reflect on the pain of this world, the heartbreak of losing loved ones, and pondering together, how do you trust God through it all?
Different people that I've buried in my church, and even since I've been here at Seacoast, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, God, I don't get this one, but I trust you. And I know your answer will be fair and it'll make sense.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue what it is, though. And that is a little bit uncomfortable. But God, I trust you.
How do you trust? Well, most of the time, there's not an easy package that wraps up real clean, even though we'd like for it to. I even thought about that about you when I was struggling through this whole process. Of course, I lost Darren a few years ago, and Billy Hornsby, and then you start to go, all my friends, that's not all my friends, but that's what you tend to do. And one of my good friends' children, it was just tragic. And I can remember thinking, I don't know the future. What if this child going to be in the hands of God right now, what do they avoid? What would have been out there in the future? Okay, Greg, you don't know the answer.
As Chip's story continues to unfold, he'll continue to share and we'll continue to learn vicariously through him. It's Chip's Mental Health and the Mission of the Church podcast. This episode, hosted by his friend and founding pastor of Seacoast Church, Greg Surratt. These partners in crime are at it again. Thanks for listening.
I like that shirt.
Buffalo Bills, baby.
That's cool.
How about those Gamecocks, man?
How about that quarterback? My gosh.
I'm telling you, man.
Hey, everybody. Glad to have you on today, and glad you're here, wherever you might be watching from. Kind of a last minute thing, but wanted to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the Christmas season, some of the emotions that we have during this. How do you handle it? And I want to bring in a couple of my friends, and let's see if I can do this. I'm kind of being the producer and the host and everything right now.
He asked me and Chip to help. We just didn't want to. We just want to enjoy the conversation. We didn't want to help.
That's right.
Exactly. This is Chip Judd and Joey Svensson. Where do we start? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Is it too early for that?
No, gosh, no. Why would it be? It's post-Thanksgiving, man. We should be blaring Christmas music. Now, look at Chip's background. I know the Judds have it right, man. Christmas trees back there. What? I mean, are you listening to Christmas music at all, Pastor Greg?
No, I don't like Christmas music.
I don't like much of it either. My wife
I like blues.
Yeah.
Give me some blues Christmas music and I'll be all right. Yeah.
Well, what about just updating the process of having to wait for those results, Pastor Chip, and the news? We obviously updated people on your social media channels, and then the latest podcast episode with Pastor Greg was recorded before you got the good news. We inserted it at the top of the episode because we had already recorded. So if people heard that, then they got that update. But I would say there's probably people watching live and they don't know the latest update, which is really good news.
I'll bet, Joey, there are people watching live that have no idea what we're talking about.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so, Chip, why don't you give us just a little bit of, well, hey, before you do, let me lay out some ground rules. First of all, we want this to be a Q&A. I'll
Right.
be asking a few questions. Joey will ask some, but we'd love to have your questions. At any point, there's a Q&A section on Zoom if you're in Zoom, or if you are on Facebook, you can just put it in the comments and I'll try to track that and follow that a little bit. Put your questions and answers. We'll try to get to them as we go along. So, Chip, why don't you give us an update? Some people have no idea what we're talking about. Your
Yeah.
medical journey and where you've come from.
Yeah. 8 years ago, 8 years ago, we knew something was wrong. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 years ago, we got an official diagnosis. Fancy name is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a lung disease that's progressive, can be slow, can be fast. They have medications that'll slow it down, but not stop it. Of course, the whole way we've been trusting God and asking and believing for a miracle and healing. I've had his peace and presence the whole way through. So we, journeyed that and kept it pretty under wraps. And then this summer, things just dipped precipitously, quickly, even a couple of times kind of scary. Hence, I went on the oxygen about August-ish, I think. Really, when I got on the oxygen, I realized I wished I'd got on it sooner because it was so helpful. And in the process, of course, the doctors are tracking where I'm at. And they said that you are getting worse and at a pretty significant rate. In other words, we're concerned, which of course begins the conversation of a lung transplant. So we began that process, 2 to 3 week, very intense evaluation where they test every part of you. Then right at the end, when we were about to go on the list, we were hit with that there was a little something going on with my liver. There was a test they needed to run, a biopsy of my liver. And the results would either put me on the list, ready to go, or disqualify me from getting lungs, which means there's no cure. Now, I trust God, believe God, but it was still pretty startling to realize that there was no medical help if that test fell the wrong way. So we had about a 5-day stretch waiting for the results that was over a weekend, and it was pretty awful, to be honest with you.
Before you go into the answer, kind of where you're at now, let's talk about that 5-day stretch. From my point of view, my wife said I didn't sleep hardly at all during that time. It's a pretty straightforward kind of, if you get approved, you have a chance to live. If you don't get approved, you may not see Christmas. Is that too stark? Is that too?
Yeah, we don't know if it would have been that quick or not. It felt to me at the time like it would have been. But yeah, that's kind of the way it hit us. It was just that black and white and scary.
Take us into the struggle.
I mean, I think Colleen and I both, we spend time with the Lord, and we felt like from the very beginning that God told us that we were going to come out the other side. Saturday of that weekend was just absolutely horrible. I think Carolina was on a bye, so we didn't even have a game to watch. That was not fun. I think we both tried to distract ourselves. We were waiting for the phone to ring and somebody to say, Tess is good, let's do this.
You and I connected for lunch on that last day. And so I've been trying to get on it.
Before we got the news. Yeah, it was before we got the news.
Before you got the news, I didn't want to bug him too much, but I want to have lunch because we have lunch and he straightens me out. It's all selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It's about me on that whole deal. Actually, I just wanted to, you know how it is. My goodness, you just want to connect, but I don't want to intrude. And so Chip texts me. I'm at a Seacoast golf tournament and he says, can you have lunch? And the answer is yes, let's do it. I'll get there quick as I can. I said, do you want me to come to the house? And he said, no, let's meet at a restaurant not far from his house. When I say not far, how many blocks is that, Chip? It's probably
a couple.
3 or 4 blocks, good sized blocks. And so I get to the restaurant and I hear somebody shout my name as I'm getting ready to go in. And here comes Chip, and he's walked from his house to the restaurant, and he's carting behind him 2 oxygen bottles on a wheel cart. And I'm thinking, here's a guy who his lungs aren't working, and he has hoofed it, 2-3 blocks from his long blocks from his house, and he can't hardly breathe. Now that was a funny scene. I just got to tell you, that was a funny
I
scene.
could tell you were enjoying it.
I was.
Now, see, I couldn't tell that story and laugh and get away with it. You guys are two older buddies, dudes goofing around. It would be disrespectful if I would have said that, but you guys are our peers.
Well, I'm thinking this guy's near death, and I could have gone by his house and picked him up, but his
Yeah, I'm
wife
thinking
sent him out the door with his oxygen.
That's
pretty
it.
hardcore. It's pretty hardcore.
Listen,
Walk
man,
on over to the restaurant.
when they
Yeah.
told my wife that exercise is good, he needs to keep using his lungs, she just kicked me out. She said, "Get your butt out the door and
Yeah.
walk over there." She's probably listening right now, so I hope she's getting a kick out of it.
Is
But I tell
there-
you what, that the lunch was hard. It was good,
Yeah, it's a little
but
tricky.
it was hard because we're staying in faith and believing that, standing on your scripture. I think I talked to you a little bit about how God had impressed trust on me.
Yeah.
You had talked about trust, and I took my dogs for a walk and trying to get my head around all this. And my deal that came was that I've got to trust God with my past, which I do, and you've helped me to do that. That God loves me and He's not mad at
Yeah.
me, and all of those kind of things. And then I've got to trust God with my present. And I was dealing with some present things in other areas of ministry. But for me, right at that moment, the hardest thing was trusting God with the future, your future and our future, and your family's future, and all of that, and getting to
Yeah.
a place of trust and all that. So we talked about all that. It was hard. It was good. It was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
All
know if
right.
you
I'll quit
remember.
interrupting. You take
I
the
don't. Well, I
story.
don't know if you remember, Greg, but I told you that one of the reasons I wanted to go to lunch was I wanted you to tell me if I was crazy. Do you remember me saying that?
Yeah, I do.
We were waiting on this result that could be, pretty medically devastating. But I really had a peace. I was very, very concerned, but I really felt strongly that either way, God was going to get us through this. And I
Yeah.
said, Greg, am I in denial? Am I so afraid to really embrace the reality of what I'm dealing with that I'm deceiving myself? So that was an interesting wrinkle to the conversation, because it was just helpful for you to hear me out and say, hey, I think you're just processing the reality of what you're dealing with. And
Do you think you struggle with any guilt of not having a very specific faith of God is going to heal me here on this earth? Is that sneaking up to where you're just like, should I be thinking that way? With a lot of your background, a lot of your peers who would say that is the sort of faith that you should have right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I came out of the Word of Faith camp. If God said it, that settles it. You can take it to the bank and all that, which I pretty much still believe. But I also believe in the word of the Lord came unto me saying, and I believe God, one of the ways God can comfort us in a situation is speaking to us about the situation. And so all through the thing, I'm a journaler and, love spending time with God. And this is the part that gets a little bit freaky, I think, for some people, particularly if they came from where I came from. I felt like God showed me myself in a hospital bed recovering from surgery. So I'm praying, God, are we going to be okay? God, you're going to heal me? What's going on here? And the next thing I see is myself in a hospital bed recovering. I thought, okay, God, I'm slow, but I'm not real slow. That seems like you're trying to give me a hint on where this is headed. And I had peace with it. I was like, God, I would prefer a miracle, and it seems like a miracle would be cool, but I want more time. I want more time on earth. I want more time with my wife and kids.
Chip, isn't that a miracle, though? I mean,
sure, yes. And thank whoever said that the first time really helped me, because the bottom line is, yes, it is a miracle.
Yeah, I mean, how long has there even been the capacity or possibility for somebody to to survive what it is that you have?
Right.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of the story. We got a phone call that day.
Yeah. Interestingly, not till after hours. So the day had ended. Colleen and I are like, oh man, we got to go one more night, it looks like. And sure enough, about 6:05, we got a call, and it was one of my reps from the hospital. Her name's Julie. And she said, well, we got the results, and you are approved to go on the list. So we just kind of lost it there for a minute. Told her if we were in her presence, we'd be hugging and kissing her. And then, of course, we started letting people know, you guys and family and that kind of thing. I think for me, you know how it is. You kind of hold it together for yourself, for your wife, for the people around you. And I think for me, I was almost sort of numb, not numb in a bad way, but just like, but it was the next day that I really felt a lightness. Like I felt, okay, God, this is what I felt like you've been saying from the beginning.
Oh man, that's got to be a sweet feeling.
And I feel like, okay, I know how to pray and how to move forward and how to continue to trust you. And at the same time, say, God, if you want to interrupt this process and drop a couple new lungs in me, have at it. But yet feeling like this is the path that God chose for me. And I'm okay with it. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the outcome, but not the process.
You probably have a little different perspective before the hiccup, whatever we want to call it, the problem with the liver. There's probably a bit more dread of the process of the lung transplant. Then it was, oh boy, we hope we get a lung transplant. And now there's probably dread with that, but it's not, it's better than it was before. It puts everything in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's the current state of things now as far as the probability of getting a lung transplant? Like you had mentioned in a former conversation, the recognition that somebody's going to have to give up their life for you. Are there certain matches that, like, is it the same sort of thing with blood? Like you need a certain type of lung? Like how does all that work? And what are your chances of getting that lung transplant?
The chances are really good. It's just when. Yes, blood type, height, size, all kinds of issues come into play. And I appreciate that you brought up a really important thought, and that is, it's not like, your sister or brother giving you a kidney. To get a lung transplant, someone has to lose their life. My ask for everybody out there is be praying for, not for it to happen, but be praying for the family, the individual, the situation. Because for me or anyone else to get a lung transplant, someone has lost their life, and probably not in an expected way. Just be in prayer about that. The process, Joey, is we're on the list. You get a number based on different factors. You wait, and your team works for you. And I'm confident. I love the team at the Medical University of South Carolina. They're doing a great job. We feel very, very well cared for. We feel like they're really in our corner, pushing for us, and they're going to do everything they can to get me a number that gets me up the list. So you wait, and when you get the call, you boom, boom, you should already have a bag ready, and you're out the door and go to the hospital, and probably within a 24-hour period, you're done.
How about the recovery process, Chip? What's involved there?
The recovery, you're in ICU for a week. The big danger after surgery is your body rejecting the lungs, and then they're giving you somewhere around 20 medications to prevent that from happening.
Jeez.
So you're in ICU for a week, and then you go to a room in the hospital for anywhere from 1 to 3, depending on how you're doing. And then you go out into the community, but you have to stay around the hospital because they want you to be able to get to the hospital quickly if something were to go off course. And they don't want you to go to just any old hospital. They want you to come there to them because they know exactly what you're dealing with and what they're dealing with. You stay around the hospital for a few weeks, 1 to 4 weeks, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And then I get the impression that first 3 months is an important window of observation. And then if you're doing well, things start loosening up. Medications start getting sorted out, what you need to stay on and come off of and whatever. Always through this whole process. Now, post-surgery, the number one threat is infection, because to make your body keep the organ, they've diminished your immune system. So you don't want an infection of any kind, cold, anything. They were really picky even about dental work, because I had some dental work done. And the bottom line is they don't want anything in your body that is potentially going to invite infection.
We've got an important question from Josh Surratt, who I believe is our lead pastor at Seacoast. He said, Joey, if you were a match, would you be willing to give Chip your lungs?
I'll let my wife Priscilla make that call. she's
wow. Well,
she's
hey Greg, I just got my lungs, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Priscilla's making the call, I just got my lungs.
Hey, I do have a quick science question that you probably know now being in this process. And then I know Pastor Greg wants to get to some more of these questions, but what's the oldest pair of lungs that you could end up with? Like, there's got to be a cutoff point where you can't donate your lungs anymore. Like,
I don't. It's a good question. I don't know.
That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, it would be. I am in a category. They don't do older people. And again, forgive me if this sounds braggadocious or something, but they have repeatedly told me that they're not looking at me as a normal 70-year-old. They normally give 70-year-olds one lung. They want to give me two if they can.
Well, you're just in incredible shape.
I'm telling you, man,
like,
it's
a specimen. You are a specimen. That's all I'm going to say. Jenny wants to know, there's a list. Do you know where you are on the list? Like, is there a number, like you're at number 5?
Yeah.
How does all that work?
I don't know the number, but yes, there is a number and there'd be a way to know. One of the people tried to show us how to get to this one website, and we got to the website, but we can't figure out how to get that specific yet.
So B kind of makes a statement, asks this. Sometimes she says, I get frustrated when God's not crystal clear with his memos or he changes midstream. Anybody else get frustrated with that? She says, when I think about the amazing work that you are doing and launching and the book completion and all of that, and then the health challenges, I wonder if you don't also ask God, did I get the memo wrong? And how do you handle that? Do you kind of get that? Kind of get the gist of what she's saying?
Yeah, I'm probably a little funny about that. I feel like my life's better than I deserve it to be. So when wrinkles like this come into it, I feel like I'm already way beyond the ticket I bought. You know what I'm saying? The benefits I've received are so far beyond what I deserve that I process it a little bit differently. You know, if my ride ended today, it's been a better ride than I deserve.
That's gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the definition of gratitude.
Yeah. I want to say this carefully. It's gratitude because it's just stupid how good my life's been, Greg. I mean, us being friends and you helping me finally write a book and the people that want to hear what I have to say. I mean, what is wrong with them that they'd want to hear what I have to say? Whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. Now, is it challenging, disruptive, scary, all of the above? Now, I'll tell you when I did wonder if God was changing the deck of cards on me was that weekend of sweating it out.
Yeah.
Because I felt so confident. Now, I wasn't saying much about it because it sounded weird to say, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have the lung transplant instead of a miracle. That just sounds weird when you're around a bunch of Christians. But I really was fairly confident that God had shown me myself in that hospital bed. So then the weekend comes and I'm thinking, okay, God, you told me I'm going to get through this thing. And now there's a possibility I'm not going to be able to get lungs. Are you changing the rules on me here? You know, does that make sense? Because it was like, if I don't get the lungs, I don't get through this unless you give me a miracle. For just a minute there, and I mean metaphorically, I was like, God, you got me a little bit confused here. But we got to the other side.
Yeah.
I didn't, to the person who asked that question, the main thing to me is make sure you build community before you get in these situations. Because what keeps you from going down these dark alleys where you get mugged is people around you that you know well enough, they know you love each other, and you can go to them and say, hey, dude, let me share something I'm thinking or praying. Do I have a screw loose? And they love you enough to say, you know, I think that's not God. And so you got to have that before you get in these pickles. Build it while you're there if you have to, but it's better to build it before.
Yeah. Hey, Jenny, who asked the first question about where you are on the list, she said that you're her hero. So I guess going back to your life has been so stupid good. This girl's calling you her hero, for crying out loud.
Come on.
I don't know if I'd go that far. You know what I mean? No, you're one of my heroes, my friend. You know that. So, Josh asks, with your health issues, has that changed your perspective on the Christmas season at all?
Uh, I'm editing my thoughts.
The whole live thing is a different dynamic, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy the holidays because the people around me enjoy the holidays. From a spiritual perspective, I don't put any more weight on Christmas, Easter, or any other day. To me, every day is death, burial, resurrection. Every day, I don't know, I just don't think like that. So I enjoy the festivity of the holidays. And I enjoy, obviously, the birth of Jesus and all, but not just during Christmas. And I know we're all the same way. So I guess the answer is no, I don't think so.
Are we unearthing a Grinch spirit here, Joey? Did you sense that or not?
No, I'm not anti. I love the joyfulness that even unsaved people have this time of year.
Yeah. So Christmas is a difficult season
Yeah.
for a lot of people. I would say most people at some point in their life go through something, lose somebody that makes Christmas difficult. You guys know, I think, that we lost a friend. Fred and Tracy Norris helped start Seacoast, and I was sitting down with Fred the other day in the hospital and said it's more than help starting Seacoast. It's almost they're one of those people that if they weren't there in the beginning, maybe Seacoast doesn't happen. When we moved to town, they took us in, became partners in ministry, and just
Wow.
we're worship leaders in the early era, even before Seacoast started, when we had a young adult group. Tracy died last week. It was very sudden for a lot of us, and fairly sudden for Fred and the family. And I remember the night she passed, went to heaven. I came home from the hospital real late that night, and just on the way home, there's just this heaviness of thinking about Christmas for them, Christmas for families. We've got to plan a service, or they're planning a service. I don't want to take too much, credit or anything for this, but and then someone else in our church lost somebody just this weekend in a very tragic way. That's the story of a significant group. We all face losing folks. How do you handle that? If you were talking to someone who had recently lost someone, or maybe somebody who they just dread Christmas. You said Christmas isn't that much different because it's the death, burial, and resurrection. I believe that about you, but some of us can bury stuff. Maybe we even make it spiritual. How do you walk through the emotions of Christmas? I know it's a big subject, but
First of all, I would acknowledge that I believe there's people that are gifted to walk beside people in those moments. And the reason I say that is I'm not one of them. I'm not saying I'm not decent at it, but there are some people that just have a supernatural ability to comfort and they know when to talk, when not to talk. It's amazing to watch. And I've seen several of them around Seacoast that seem to have that, what I would call a gift. So, pray that person or more than one shows up in that family's life. The thing about this kind of pain, now, if we're talking about the recent loss, no matter how you look at it, no matter what angle you come at it from, there's an element of it. You can't go above it, around it, below it, but through it.
mm,
And about the only comforting thing I've come up with, Greg, is how horrible would it be if you left this earth and no one cried?
mm,
So for me, that pain I would feel for that loved one, again, it doesn't make it go away, doesn't make it lessen, but to give it purpose, you're punctuating and celebrating that life, that person, and that the place they held in your life. And again, it helps me to just think, how horrible would it be that no one's crying, no one misses you. So it's kind of a gift. Your pain is kind of a gift in a weird way.
That's so true. I'll say real quick, I'll never forget because my daughter is not a huge shower of emotions. And this was when she was about in the eighth grade. She lost her great grandmother. And I remember looking over and seeing her sobbing at her great grandmother's funeral, she's a very special, sweet woman in my life too. And that's a gift to me, and it will always be, as having that visual to see how much my grandmother meant to my daughter.
Right,
It's
right.
and I didn't like I didn't like seeing her in pain mourning either, but I realized the gift aspect of it now that you've said that. That's really neat.
Yeah, somebody on Zoom right now asked this. Is it okay? So is it okay to question God, or is it more of a conversation with God? In moments like you faced, Chip, and still face. I mean, we talk about we're over it, but we've still got
Yeah,
quite a bit to get through. But we are at
yeah,
a better place than we were last time we talked publicly on this. But
yeah, that's right.
or if you're like my friends and we're there in the hospital, we're just praying and reading scripture and just believing God, and ultimately there's a death as a result of it. Is it okay to question God?
I think it is. Like, again, I'll use my situation. I look at scripture and I see by his stripes we're healed. I see, forgives all our iniquities and heals all our diseases. So I see scripture and a fairly overwhelming argument for healing. And I look at my situation. I say, okay, God, I acknowledge that you're in charge and you can do as you please. But I also believe you're a God of integrity. You say what you mean and mean what you say. So I have questions. I'm a little confused, but it's not like how dare you or why me. I call it file 13. I have a file where I put these questions and I say, God, whether it's in this life or the next, can we can we come back and visit this and you explain to me what exactly you were thinking when this happened? And I mean, not so much my situation, but different people that I've buried in my church, and even since I've been here at Seacoast. I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, God, here's how the flavor, the texture of it. I would say, God, I don't get this one, but I trust you. And I
Yeah,
know your answer will be fair and it'll make sense.
yeah.
I don't have a clue what it is, though. And that is a little bit uncomfortable. The foundation I stand on is, but God, I trust you. You did everything you could do in this situation.
I kind of feel the same way. My trust, and how do you trust? And there's so much, and I'm well, most of the time there's not an easy package that wraps up real clean, even though we'd like for it to. I even thought about that about you when I was struggling through this whole process. And of course, I lost Darren Patrick a few years ago, and Billy Hornsby, and then you
Yeah.
start to go, well, all my friends, or
Yeah.
that's not all my friends, but that's what you tend to to
Yeah.
to do, and this isn't right, and how can this be? And I know I need to trust, and I go back to it's Job shaking his fist at God, which I relate to a little bit, but God pointing out to him, did you create all of this? In other words, do you know more than I do? And I think that I know how it should end for everybody, in a way that will be advantageous to them and to my needs and emotions. But I don't know what
Right.
the future holds. I lost my mom at 54 years old.
Mm.
And I remember that. I didn't understand that at all. She was 54. I was 30 something. I also remember burying one of my good friend's children that it was just tragic. And I can remember thinking, I don't know the future.
Mm.
What if this child going to be in the hands of God right now? What do they avoid?
Mm.
What would have been out there in the future? What types of things that I didn't see? And I'm not saying that's God's reasoning, but I try to, in my own mind,
Yeah.
go, okay, Greg, you don't know the answer, but you think that the future is all going to be wonderful and great, and yet this could have been the grace of God. That's probably a terrible way to look at it, but that's how I, in my own way, climb deeper into trusting God, just to say I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but
Yeah.
I got to trust Him.
Yeah, you hit on tragedy with a child, whether it's a long-term illness, a terminal illness, a tragedy, accident, or something. That one will make me scratch my head pretty hard.
Yeah.
Now, everything you're saying makes sense, and I believe there will be a day when it will all make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean we have to like it. Doesn't mean we can't tell God, who in the world do you think you are for just a minute? I think you're allowed a couple of minutes where you just kind of give them a piece of your mind. I've never heard a really adequate answer for me, but wasn't it at Lazarus's tomb that Jesus wept? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think to myself, okay, like what was that? And I like to think that maybe for just a moment, even though he knew he's going to raise from the dead, what if for just a moment he felt what we feel when you lose someone?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm saying. So when we're dealing with some horrible, unexpected, or whatever, it helps me to think every tear we're crying, God's got some of his own. I don't think God enjoys our pain. And that's what I mean. There's things about it that I think it's pretty ridiculous for us to think we're going to be able to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. It would scare me if God couldn't do something that we couldn't figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. He's too small in that case.
Yeah.
Somebody who asked the question on Zoom, he's saying, now being in the position your friend Jack Frost was in, and Jack Frost was a friend of yours and
Yeah.
influence on you, and how you felt when he passed, has anything changed in how you feel now? Or is there a lesson to learn that you can share when we get angry with God and when our loved one is not healed? Well, we've been talking about that a little bit. Maybe there's, maybe you got a little more insight on that.
Well, I do believe in spiritual warfare, and I don't know that it's fair to say that, yes, we're in spiritual warfare, but God always wins, because I don't know that that's kind of like everybody gets a trophy, whether you do what you're supposed to do or not. So I think Jack was a casualty of war, to be quite honest with you. I feel like if my situation did or does go badly, I would want to be seen as a casualty of war. I don't think Jack dying at the age he died at was the best God had. In other words, are you saying it wasn't God's will? Yeah, I pretty much am. But I'd have to get into an hour and a half of theology to explain why I say something like that. I don't think God always gets what he wants.
Wow. Okay, so Joey, we need to schedule another hour. Does God always get what he wants? That's good. That'd be a great conversation, and I'd love to go deeper on that.
Can I answer it
go
real
ahead.
quick? I can just answer it simply. All you have to do is just check the first story in the Bible. If God gets what he wants every single time, then he wanted the fall to happen. There you go. Done.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
we need 5 hours. We need 5 hours on that.
My brain has got to wrap it up to say, yes, I agree with that. And it's in the same realm of, the scripture that says, in all things give thanks, for this is God's will for you, in 1 Thessalonians 5:18. It doesn't say for all things give thanks. I can't give thanks for the things that we've talked about over the last few minutes. I can't give thanks for all of that. But in all of those things, God works, and God has the final say. And there are casualties of the war, but the war isn't lost. The war's already been won.
Absolutely.
And there are medals to be passed out, and there are people to be honored, and all of those. So in my mind, yes, I would agree, but I would also say that God has that unique ability to make the tapestry to where it's beautiful in His time. In His time. When we're in the midst of it, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're in the time, but we are in the time we're supposed to be in.
Greg, the interesting thing is when we're in the middle of a pain caused by the loss of someone, we think it's going to lessen our pain if we understand why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not. It's not going to lessen our pain. It may later help, but it's just not. The psychology side of it is it gives us a sense of control. Like when I feel like I understand why it happened, I don't feel as vulnerable and alone. An accident is just frightening. And so what you just said, what Joey said, what I said, what we're really saying is there's a complexity to this stuff that's beyond our soul's desire for a simple answer. And I think the church has settled for simple answers, and at times it causes more harm than good.
I want to ask one more question and then we'll wrap this up. Ryan gives it, and Ryan says this: love you, Chip. I believe with you that you'll be on that recovery bed.
Come on.
I imagine facing something like this brings a new level of clarity. When you get through the transplant process, how do you think you'll spend your time? What will you focus on? You've made a huge difference in the church and with your friends and family. What, if anything, is still left undone?
Interestingly, I just journaled yesterday and I put this word down. Focus is or equals concentration of power. And what I mean is I want to do less by doing more of the right stuff that I'm uniquely called to. I want to not chase so many rabbits, and I want to play more. I want to, in a sense, I want to work more focused, and I want to play more intentionally. That's what I want to do when I get to the other side of this.
That's awesome. That sounds like more concerts in our future. I like that.
Come on.
Oh, man. You got to get healed up. We got another book to do, bro.
Yes.
One of the reasons we did the Endurance Factor is because I really felt like you had just a bunch of stuff inside of you that the world needed to hear. And hey, that book is still good. That'd be a great Christmas gift, for a family or friend. I promoted. I gave my rights away to it anyway. So I think there's more in there and more left to do. Guys, hopefully those of you who are listening or will listen in the future can get some benefit out of real life experience. Life doesn't always go the way that you hope that it would or that we believe for, and I still think that we've got to have faith, and we believe, and there's, just having faith, I think you're in a better mental place than if you don't have faith. The Bible says we grieve, but we don't grieve as those who have no hope. That hope, that's the key word, and that's the thing that gets us through. Any last words?
That's what buoyed my soul through this whole thing, Greg. I never for one moment was fearful of my future. What got me through was this simple thought: I die way earlier than I wanted to. Well, just a superficial reading of scripture would indicate what follows this life's pretty good. So I'm like, okay, that sounds like a win. And then I think, okay, well, if I get through it, that's a win. I couldn't see a loss anywhere. Now, I could for my wife and my kids and all that. Right. But then I said, okay, God, if you've taken this good a care of us up to this point, I haven't taken that good a care of my wife and family. You have. So you can do that without me. It's that hope that you're talking about. I didn't understand questions. I was scared a couple of times. But fundamentally, hope is a constant expectation of good. I knew wherever this thing went, it might have some moments that weren't good, but I knew the outcome was going to be good. And worst case scenario, I miss my wife for what? Maybe she lives 20 more years. Then it's like, hey, get over here and get me some tea. No.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, boy.
That's an inside joke.
Oh, boy.
As far as your community is concerned, Pastor Chip, I didn't ask you permission to share this, but your daughter set up a Caring Bridge site to keep up with this journey. But I also thought this just speaks volumes to the community you've been blessed with, that there's a GoFundMe set up with a $50,000 goal, and there's been 224 separate donations of a total of $42,000. So that's a little sign of how many people love you and love you to that degree, man. That's really awesome. Really awesome.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Joey, some of the things that have been said with those gifts or without them, but some of the things that have been said just humble you to your knees, man. I mean, why else you want to get out of bed in the morning?
Somebody asked me this weekend, now, is that to cover medical bills? And really it's not. I think, that's medical bills are going to be a lot higher than that. I think and there's insurance and what have you. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. A lot of what Chip does, believe it or not, is income that comes when he's on the road, as a consultant and a counselor and all of that. And we just want to make it to where, and his family are wonderful folks and friends, but we want to make it to where that's one less thing he has to worry about.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about, boy, we got to heal up, we got to get on the road. In fact, I hope he doesn't get on the road. I hope we figure, well, I don't want to say it like that, but I don't want you on the road like you were. I want you to be able to.
I'm not in any hurry.
And maybe leverage through things like this, through, video and what have you, be able to leverage what God has given you. Well, listen, it's been good. Thanks for listening, and we appreciate y'all, and we'll see you on the flip side.
We'll see y'all.
Joey, let's see if he makes his name bigger than ours.
Oh, yeah, I will.
His will probably be all caps, and ours will be like little byline over in the corner. Or he'll just put Greg Surratt and friends. Well, he'll put Greg Surratt and friend plus Joey.
Plus Joey, huh?
The title's going to be called Pastoring a Sick Friend.
Is that you? You talking about yourself? Big Doug.
Was that supposed to mean, that last comment?
Well, I was trying to not say, could we switch out Doug and Joey? So you kind of caught me.
You took a sharp turn, and it was Big Doug.
Yeah, I just kept me from saying something I shouldn't say. Then you made me say it. And we got to the website, but we can't figure out how to get that specific yet.
Are you trying to hack it and move yourself up?
No, because I know everybody on there's in the same situation.
I know. Probably not a funny joke.
Well, Joey, we'll forgive you.
I have an idea on this, but I want to pitch it to you.
That's part of the question?
No, that was my editing at the end.
Oh, okay.
I have an idea.
Like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, I was like, what in the world?